The signal from beyond. The command center of Earth Defense Force headquarters hummed with the steady rhythm of operations that had become routine over decades of peace. Located in the heart of the Olympus Mons colony on Mars, the massive underground facility served as humanity's watchful eye over their expanding territory among the stars. Screens lined the walls, displaying feeds from outposts scattered throughout the solar system and beyond, each one a testament to humanity's relentless drive to explore and expand. Admiral Victor Chen stood motionless at the center of the command floor, hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the controlled chaos around him. At 63, his face carried the weathered lines of someone who had witnessed humanity's greatest triumphs and most devastating failures. The silver in his close-cropped hair had long since overtaken the black, but his eyes remained sharp, constantly assessing, analyzing. "Status report," he said, his voice carrying across the room without needing to raise it. Years of command had given him that gift, the ability to be heard without shouting. Lieutenant Commander Jiang looked up from her console. "All colonies reporting normal operations. Admiral, deep space probes in the Arcturus sector have completed their survey. Data packets incoming." Chen nodded, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity's expansion had been steady and largely peaceful over the past 30 years. The unified Earth government had learned from centuries of conflict, and while the military remained strong, stronger than ever, some would argue, its purpose had shifted from conquest to protection. The relative calm of the command center shattered without warning. "Sir," the voice came from Ensign Rivera, her fingers flying across her console as she tried to isolate an incoming transmission. "We're picking up a distress signal from Nova Esperanza." Chen's posture stiffened. Nova Esperanza was one of humanity's most distant colonies, established 8 years ago in the Cygnus Arm, nearly 300 light-years from Earth. The planet was resource-rich, but still in its early development stages, with only about 15,000 colonists. "Put it through," he ordered, already moving toward the main view screen. The image that materialized was fragmented and distorted. A woman's face appeared, her features contorted with fear. Blood streaked one side of her face, and the lighting around her flickered ominously. "Defense systems failing. Unknown vessels. They're not responding to any." Static cut through her words. "Massive in size. Weapons unlike anything. Casualties there." More static. "Please, we need immediate assistance. They're not just attacking there." The woman looked over her shoulder, her eyes widening in horror at something off-screen. The feed cut to black. Silence fell over the command center. "That was Governor Perez," Lieutenant Commander Jiang said quietly. "The timestamp indicates this message was sent 11 hours ago." Chen's mind was already racing through the implications. How long would it take our nearest vessel to reach Nova Esperanza? "The UES Horizon is the closest ship with significant military capability, sir. They could reach the colony in approximately 72 hours at maximum FTL." Chen shook his head. "Not fast enough." He turned to address the entire command center. "I want a full analysis of that transmission. Every frame, every sound. And get me everything we have on Nova Esperanza. Colony layout, defensive capabilities, recent communications, everything." As the command center erupted into renewed activity, Chen retreated to a quieter alcove where a three-dimensional map of known space hovered before him. Nova Esperanza glowed red at the edge of human-controlled territory. "What do you think, sir?" The question came from Commander Talia Reeves, his chief tactical officer. She had approached silently, her expression grim. "I think we're looking at the scenario we've been preparing for since we first ventured beyond our solar system," Chen replied. "First contact with a hostile species." Reeves nodded slowly. "The Nova Esperanza colony has minimal military presence. A single defense platform, a handful of fighters. They wouldn't stand a chance against a determined attack. Which means we need to respond with overwhelming force," Chen concluded. He studied the map again, his eyes settling on a small blue icon orbiting Mars. How quickly can the 7th Fleet be ready for deployment? Reeves couldn't hide her surprise. The 7th. Sir, that's our most advanced combat group. 6 heavy cruisers, 15 destroyers, and the UES Vanguard as flagship. I'm aware of the fleet composition, Commander. How quickly? 24 hours to full combat readiness. But, sir, deploying the 7th would leave the inner colonies with reduced protection. Chen's gaze remained fixed on the map. If whatever hit Nova Esperanza decides to push deeper into our territory, the inner colonies will need more than the 7th Fleet to protect them. This is about buying time and gathering intelligence. He turned to face her fully. And Commander Reeves, you'll be going with them. I want you on the Vanguard as my personal representative. Reeves straightened imperceptibly. Yes, sir. What are my orders? Assess the situation, render aid to any survivors, and gather as much intelligence as possible about these attackers. But your primary objective is to determine the level of threat they pose to humanity as a whole. Chen's expression hardened. And if necessary, deliver a message that humanity is not to be trifled with. The UES Vanguard was a monument to human ingenuity and determination. At 2 kilometers in length, it was the largest warship ever constructed by human hands, its sleek, angular form designed to maximize both firepower and maneuverability. As Commander Talia Reeves' shuttle approached the massive vessel, she could see the flurry of activity surrounding it. Supply ships docking, maintenance crews working on exterior systems, fighter squadrons running combat drills. The 7th Fleet was preparing for war. Impressive, isn't she? The shuttle pilot's voice pulled Reeves from her thoughts. Every time, she agreed, her eyes tracing the distinctive profile of the Vanguard. The ship's hull was covered in ablative armor plating that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light of Mars' distant sun. 4 massive engine nacelles extended from the rear, capable of propelling the vessel to speeds that would have been considered impossible just 2 decades ago. But it wasn't the Vanguard's size or speed that made it the pride of Earth's fleet. It was the ship's weapon systems. Railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. Energy weapons that could slice through the toughest known materials. And beneath the hull, concealed in armored silos, rested the ship's ultimate deterrent. NOVA warheads, weapons with the destructive potential to rend a small moon into asteroid fields. The shuttle docked with practiced precision, and Reeves was met by a young lieutenant who snapped to attention as she stepped through the airlock. Commander Reeves, welcome aboard the Vanguard. I'm Lieutenant Park. Captain Adeyemi asked me to escort you to the bridge immediately. Reeves nodded, falling into step beside the lieutenant as they navigated the ship's corridors. Unlike older vessels with their utilitarian design philosophy, the Vanguard's interior reflected humanity's newfound confidence. The corridors were wide and well-lit, the bulkheads adorned with subtle design elements that hinted at Earth's diverse cultural heritage. The fleet is at 97% combat readiness, Park informed her as they walked. Final personnel transfers will be complete within the hour, and all ships report weapons systems fully operational. How's the crew taking it? Reeves asked. Park hesitated briefly. They're professional, ma'am. But there's an undercurrent of anticipation. Most of these people have never seen actual combat. The Vanguard has never fired its weapons outside of training exercises. Let's hope that experience counts for something when the time comes, Reeves said quietly. The bridge of the Vanguard was a testament to human-centered design. A circular chamber dominated by a central holographic projection area where 3-dimensional tactical displays could be manipulated and analyzed from any angle. Workstations radiated outward from this central area, each manned by specialists monitoring every aspect of the ship's operations. Captain Ibrahim Adeyemi stood from his command chair as Reeves entered. Tall and broad-shouldered, with close-cropped gray hair and a neatly trimmed beard, Adeyemi had a presence that filled the room. Commander Reeves, he greeted her, extending a hand. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. As do I, Captain. She shook his hand firmly. Admiral Chen sends his regards and his confidence in your abilities. Adeyemi nodded, gesturing for her to join him at the tactical display. We've been analyzing the Nova Esperanza distress call. Our AI systems enhanced the audio and isolated some background sounds that weren't immediately apparent. He activated the display, and a three-dimensional representation of sound waves appeared before them. "Listen to this," he said, manipulating the controls. The bridge speakers emitted a low, rhythmic pulsing sound unlike anything Reeves had heard before. It seemed to resonate at a frequency that made her teeth ache. "What is that?" she asked. "We believe it's some form of communication," Adeyemi replied, "possibly between the attacking vessels. Our linguists have been working on it, but without more samples, they're limited in what they can determine." Reeves studied the waveform. "Any theories about who or what we're facing?" "Nothing concrete. None of our probes or deep space telescopes have detected unusual activity in that sector before the attack. These attackers either have stealth technology beyond our capabilities, or they arrived through means we don't understand." "FTL capabilities beyond our own," Reeves mused. "Possibly." Adeyemi's expression was grim. "Which would mean we're dealing with a technologically superior force." Reeves considered this. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel 30 years ago, using the Einstein-Rosen bridge method that created temporary wormholes between 2 points in space. The technology had revolutionized space travel, but had limitations. It required massive energy expenditure and precise calculations. If these attackers had more advanced FTL capabilities, humanity's technological edge might be more precarious than they had believed. "The fleet will be ready to depart in 40 minutes, Commander," Adeyemi continued. "We've loaded extra medical supplies and emergency shelters in case there are survivors." "Good." Reeves nodded approvingly. "And combat readiness. All weapons systems primed and tested. Fighter squadrons at full complement. We've also brought along 2 battalions of Marines, though I pray we won't need them." A communications officer interrupted them. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Chen." Adeyemi straightened. "Put it through." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main view screen. His expression was even more grave than when Reeves had left him. "Captain Adeyemi, Commander Reeves, we've received another transmission from Nova Esperanza." He paused, visibly gathering himself. It was automated, triggered by catastrophic failure of the colony's central systems. The telemetry data suggests a complete collapse of their defensive grid followed by significant orbital bombardment. The bridge fell silent. "What are you saying, sir?" Adeyemi asked, though the answer was written clearly on Chen's face. "I'm saying that Nova Esperanza has fallen. Based on the data we've received, we must assume there are no survivors." Chen's voice remained steady, but Reeves could see the cost of that control in his eyes. "Your mission parameters have changed. The 7th Fleet is no longer conducting a rescue operation. You are to proceed to the Nova Esperanza system, gather all possible intelligence on these attackers, and assess the threat they pose to other human colonies." "And if we encounter the hostile force?" Adeyemi asked. Chen's response was immediate and unambiguous. "You are authorized to use all necessary force to protect your fleet and to ensure that whatever destroyed Nova Esperanza understands the consequences of attacking humanity." As the transmission ended, Reeves felt the weight of 15,000 lives pressing down upon her shoulders. Nova Esperanza, New Hope, had become humanity's first great loss in the cosmic arena. "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure," Adeyemi ordered, his voice cutting through the stunned silence of the bridge. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill." As the 7th Fleet broke orbit from Mars and aligned for the jump to FTL, Commander Reeves stood at the tactical station, her mind racing through scenarios, strategies, contingencies. Whatever waited for them at Nova Esperanza, she was determined that humanity would not suffer another loss. The countdown reached 0, and space itself seemed to fold around the fleet as the Einstein-Rosen generators created a temporary tunnel through the fabric of reality. The Seventh Fleet, humanity's most powerful fighting force, vanished from the solar system, embarking on what would become the most consequential journey in human history. What they would find at the other end would change everything. Unforeseen alliance. The Seventh Fleet emerged from FTL in the outskirts of the Nova Esperanza system, sensors immediately scanning for signs of the aggressors. Commander Talia Reeves stood on the bridge of the UES Vanguard, her eyes fixed on the tactical display as data began streaming in. Initial scans show multiple debris fields in orbit around Nova Esperanza, reported Lieutenant Commander Seiko Nakamura, the Vanguard sensor officer. Consistent with the remains of the colony's defense platform and civilian ships that attempted to evacuate. Captain Adayemi's expression remained stoic, but Reeves could see the tension in his jaw. Any sign of the attackers? Negatives, sir. No vessels detected in system aside from our own. That doesn't mean they're not here, Reeves said quietly. Deploy reconnaissance drones. Maximum stealth profile. I want eyes on every corner of this system. Yes, Commander. Nakamura's fingers flew across her console, dispatching the small, nearly undetectable drones that would serve as the fleet's forward scouts. Adeyemi turned to his communications officer. Any signals? Emergency beacons? Anything to suggest survivors? Nothing on standard frequencies, sir. The young officer's voice held a note of frustration. But there's significant electromagnetic interference in the lower atmosphere. Could be masking weaker signals. Reeves studied the visual feed of Nova Esperanza itself. From orbit, the planet still appeared beautiful. Swirling blue oceans, green-brown continents, wispy white clouds. But as the sensors zoomed in on the main colony site, the devastation became apparent. What had once been a thriving settlement was now a smoking crater, surrounded by smaller impact sites that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Precision orbital bombardment, she noted grimly. They knew exactly where to hit us. This wasn't random violence. It was surgical. Sir, Nakamura's voice cut through the somber moment. One of our drones is picking up an anomalous energy signature. It's unlike anything I've seen before. Location, Adeyemi demanded. Far side of the planet's largest moon. The signature is fluctuating, as if it's unstable or damaged. Reeves leaned forward, studying the new data. Could be one of the attacker's ships. Damaged in the assault. Possibly, Nakamura conceded. But the energy profile doesn't match anything in our databases. Adeyemi didn't hesitate. Tactical, I want a strike group assembled. 2 destroyers and a cruiser. Approach with caution, weapons hot. Wait. Reeves raised a hand. There's something else. She pointed to a small rhythmic fluctuation in the energy signature. See that pattern? It's deliberate. That's not random damage. It's a signal. A distress call. Adeyemi suggested. Or a trap, countered his first officer. Reeves shook her head. I don't think so. The pattern is too specific. She turned to the communications officer. Run this through our first contact protocols. See if there's any match to known linguistic structures. Minutes passed in tense silence as the computer analyzed the signal. Finally, the communications officer looked up in surprise. It's using a variation of an old Earth binary code, Commander. Simplified, but recognizable. They're trying to communicate with us, Reeves realized, using a system they think we might understand. Adeyemi considered this. Can we respond? I believe so, sir. Do it. But maintain combat readiness. This could still be a deception. A tense half-hour followed as the fleet established rudimentary communication with the unknown vessel. As the exchange progressed, a startling picture emerged. Sir, the communications officer reported, we believe we're in contact with a species calling themselves the Archai. They claim they arrived just after the attack on Nova Esperanza. They engaged the attackers but were damaged in the battle. They're saying they tried to help us. Adeyemi looked skeptical. Yes, sir. And they're requesting permission to approach under escort. They say they have critical information about the attackers. Reeves and Adeyemi exchanged glances. This was precisely the kind of first contact scenario that had been theorized but never experienced. Meeting a potential ally in the aftermath of an attack by a common enemy. Allow them to approach, Adeyemi decided, but have destroyers Artemis and Apollo flank them with weapons locked. At the first sign of hostile action, they are to open fire. As the damaged alien vessel slowly emerged from behind the moon, the bridge crew fell silent. The ship was unlike anything humans had ever constructed. Roughly cylindrical, but with organic-looking protrusions that seemed to pulse with inner light. Its hull was a dark, iridescent material that shifted colors as it moved, and sections of it appeared to be actively repairing themselves. Fascinating, Reeves murmured. Their technology appears to be partially biological. The alien vessel maintained a respectful distance from the human fleet, making no aggressive moves. After another hour of increasingly sophisticated communication, a more complete picture emerged. The Archaea claimed they've been monitoring the expansion of the race that attacked us, Reeves reported to Adeyemi in the privacy of the captain's ready room. They call them the Nephilim, a species that has systematically wiped out dozens of emerging civilizations over the past several centuries. For what purpose? Adeyemi asked. Resources, primarily. The Nephilim strip planets of valuable minerals, particularly rare elements that can be used in their technology. But there's more. Reeves hesitated. The Archaea believe the Nephilim specifically target species that show potential for rapid technological growth. They eliminate competitors before they become threats. Adeyemi's expression darkened, which explains why they hit an isolated colony first. They're testing our capabilities, our response. Exactly. And the Archaea have a proposal. Reeves pulled up a holographic display showing schematics of what appeared to be some kind of weapon system. They want to share technology with us, specifically defensive systems that could help protect our colonies against Nephilim attacks. But they need our help in return. What kind of help? The Archaea vessel is more damaged than it initially appeared. They need materials for repairs, materials they believe we can provide. And they want to coordinate a joint response to the Nephilim. Adeyemi leaned back in his chair, considering the implications. An alliance with an alien species we just met, against another alien species we've never seen. Admiral Chen will have my head, or promote you for securing humanity's first interstellar alliance, Reeves countered. Sir, everything we've learned so far suggests the Archaea are sincere. Their ship could have easily attacked our drones when they detected them, but they chose to communicate instead. And their technology. It's advanced, but not so far beyond ours that we couldn't understand and adapt it. Before Adeyemi could respond, an alert sounded. Lieutenant Commander Nakamura's voice came over the intercom. Captain, Commander, we've detected multiple FTL signatures at the edge of the system. Large vessels, approaching fast. The next few hours were a blur of activity as the 7th Fleet prepared for its first real combat engagement. The approaching vessels were quickly confirmed as Nephilim, massive, angular ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Unlike the organic appearance of the Archaea vessel, the Nephilim ships were all hard edges and geometric precision, their hulls covered in what appeared to be weapon emplacements. 7 capital ships, reported Nakamura from her station, each approximately 1.5 kilometers in length, plus what looks like several dozen smaller craft, probably fighters or bombers. They outnumber us, Adeyemi noted grimly. But we have something they don't, Reeves countered. The Archaea. In a decision that would later be scrutinized by military historians for decades, Captain Adeyemi authorized an emergency technology transfer between the human fleet and the Archaea vessel. Engineering teams worked feverishly to adapt Archaea defensive systems to human ships, while simultaneously providing the Archaea with materials needed for their repairs. The Nephilim approached with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Their initial communications were not an offer of negotiation, but a demand for surrender. Humanity was to abandon all colonies beyond the solar system and restrict its activities to Earth and its immediate neighbors. "They're not even trying to hide their intentions," Reeves observed as she and Adeyemi reviewed the ultimatum. "They've done this before, and they've never been challenged." "Then let's give them something new to think about," Adeyemi replied. He turned to his tactical officer. "Implement Battle Plan Omega. All ships to assume Formation Delta, and make sure the Archi are in position." The human fleet spread out in a three-dimensional formation designed to maximize firing arcs, while minimizing exposure to enemy weapons. The Archi vessel, now partially repaired, took position at the heart of the formation, its strange biological technology pulsing with energy. As the Nephilim closed to weapons range, they maintained their arrogant posture, apparently unconcerned by the human fleet's preparations. Their first volley, a barrage of energy weapons that cut through space like burning spears, was aimed at the Vanguard itself, clearly identifying it as the command ship. But the attack never landed. The Archi technology, hastily integrated into the Vanguard systems, created a distortion field around the ship that bent the incoming energy beams away from their target. The Nephilim weapons, so devastating against the unprepared Nova Esperanza colony, proved ineffective against this combined defense. "Return fire," Adeyemi ordered, his voice steady despite the tension thrumming through the bridge. "All ships, fire at will." The Seventh Fleet responded with a coordinated barrage that caught the Nephilim completely by surprise. Railgun projectiles, accelerated to relativistic speeds, tore through the lead Nephilim vessel's shields and penetrated deep into its hull. Energy weapons, enhanced by Archi targeting data, struck with unprecedented precision. But it was the Archi vessel itself that delivered the most devastating blow. As the battle reached its peak, the alien ship released what appeared to be living projectiles, semi-autonomous weapons that sought out and attached themselves to Nephilim ships. Upon contact, these organic munitions began to physically deconstruct the enemy vessels, breaking down their hulls at the molecular level. "My God," whispered Nakamura as they watched the feed. "It's like they're being eaten alive." The Nephilim, facing resistance unlike anything they had encountered before, attempted to regroup. Their formation tightened, their remaining ships clustering together in what appeared to be a defensive posture. "They're preparing to jump to FTL," Reeves realized. "They're retreating." "Not all of them," Adeyemi said firmly. "Tactical, target the trailing vessel. Full barrage, all weapons. Let's make sure they have something to remember us by." The combined might of the human fleet, focused on a single target, was awesome to behold. The Nephilim ship, already damaged from the initial exchange, was virtually vaporized under the onslaught. The remaining enemy vessels accelerated rapidly, their drives flaring as they prepared for FTL jump. In moments, they had vanished from the system, leaving behind only debris and the echoes of a battle that had changed the course of human history. "Damage report," Adeyemi demanded as the bridge crew began to process what had just occurred. "Minor damage to the destroyers Hermes and Athena," reported his first officer. 3 casualties reported fleet-wide. No ships lost. A stunned silence fell over the bridge. They had just faced a technologically superior enemy, one that had effortlessly destroyed an entire human colony, and they had emerged virtually unscathed. "The Archi are hailing us." As the communication ended, Reeves turned to Adeyemi. "Sir, I recommend we establish a permanent presence in this system, not just to honor those we lost, but as a statement of intent. Humanity will not be driven from the stars." Adeyemi nodded slowly. "I agree. And I think I know what Admiral Chen will say when we report back." He looked around the bridge, at the faces of his crew, humans who had just made history. "We came here expecting to find nothing but death and destruction. Instead, we found hope for the future, not just for humanity, but for all intelligent life in our galaxy." "Nova Esperanza," Reeves murmured. "New hope. Perhaps the colony lived up to its name after all. In the days that followed, as the Seventh Fleet secured the system and began the somber task of documenting what had happened to the colony, the significance of what they had achieved began to sink in. Humanity, a species that had only recently ventured beyond its home system, had successfully defended itself against an ancient cosmic predator. And in doing so, they had gained not just an ally, but a place in a much larger community of intelligent beings. The galaxy, it seemed, was both more dangerous and more full of possibility than anyone had imagined. But one thing was certain: humanity would face whatever came next with the same determination and ingenuity that had defined their species since they first looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond. As the UES Vanguard prepared to return to Earth, carrying news that would forever change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe, Commander Talia Reeves stood at the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. The path ahead would not be easy. The Nephilim would return, possibly with forces that would dwarf what they had faced today. But for the first time since the distress call from Nova Esperanza had shattered the peace of Earth's command center, Reeves felt a sense of genuine hope. Humanity had proven itself not just to potential enemies, but to potential allies as well. The stars no longer seemed quite so cold or distant, and the future, though uncertain, promised to be extraordinary.